But first things first, happy Pride Weekend! Here we are, 37 years later in San Diego, and we're still celebrating Pride. We still have a successful organization, and we have a city in which we have 3 elected officials on the city council who are lesbian or gay. First things first, you know, when I was a young man and I had my little group of friends who I went out with, partied with, stayed out all night, and did all those things that we did. We all had our little games, and one of the things that we decided we were one year after Pride was getting in, we decided we were going to call ourselves the Thank You Queens, because we wanted to give thanks for being alive, having survived the AIDS crisis, being able to be active in our community, and having loving friends and family. So we're Thank You Queens. So as a Thank You Queen, I'm going to give a few thanks. Again, I want you to join with me in thanking the all-volunteer Board of Directors of Pride, the staff, and as was mentioned earlier, this organization has been working ever since the end of last year's Pride. It takes it all the way to get here. But most important, I want you to acknowledge the probably 250 to 300 army of volunteers who also make it happen. While you're at the festival and you're at the parade, and the people who are keeping you from getting hurt or guiding you to where you need to be, thank them. They're doing it because they want to be a part of this community. They're doing it to give you part of their time, and it just all makes it absolutely terrific. So don't forget to thank those volunteers as you leave and in the next days. The other thanks I have to give is very personal. I want to thank my partner, Tom Knoll, who's here. Tom and I have been together 27 years. I have some family members here, my cousin Evelyn and Denise, my niece Kimberly, where are you? She's here somewhere. Tomorrow, there they are. Tomorrow, 2 of my nieces and Tom will ride with me in the parade. You know, you can't do these things in a vacuum. You're energized and passionate as a political wonk like I am, and an activist for human and civil rights, but you can't do it without someone behind you. The private person, the person that helps you lick your wounds when you've had it rough, who encourages you, brags about you, and keeps you going. That's been my life with Tom Knoll. My family has supported me. Tom and I were blessed to have both of our families in our little interracial relationship support us and accept us unequivocally. I know that's not true of everyone, but we were blessed by having families who stood behind us and beside us and all the way to where we are. And it would be really nice if my dad were still around, because something momentous is going to happen in that parade tomorrow. You've heard about it. There's going to be more than 350 active duty military marching for the first time. My dad was in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy, and when people ask me what my ghetto experience was, I'd say it was gray. And they'd look at me quizzically and say, what does that mean, gray? Didn't you grow up in Nevada? Well, that was part of my experience. But my dad was in the Navy, and we lived on Navy bases from San Diego to Hawaii, Midway Island, Patuxent River, Maryland, Norfolk, Virginia. You know the drill. That's what happens to Navy families. And they're all painted gray, those houses and those projects that we lived in. So that was my ghetto experience. When I came out to my dad and my mother, one day my dad was talking about the parade, and he said, the military's not there, is it? And I said, no, not yet, Dad, but we'll make it happen. We're working on it. We're really working on it. And it's going to happen. And the wheels are in motion. Those wheels are in motion because people like you have supported the work of activists like me and yourselves and other organizations. I'm proud to tell you that the young man who organized the military contingent that's grown in these last days is a member of the San Diego Democratic Club. He's an active duty military young guy, kind of a quiet guy. His name is Sean Sala. Are you here, Sean? If you are, wave out. Sean's a quiet, unassuming guy. Came back from deployment in the Middle East a few months ago, so we were seeing him again at Democratic Club meetings, and then he all of a sudden had this twinkle in his eye because he had an idea. He was going to do this. He was going to work with Pride, and of course Pride helped him. And tomorrow, amazing thing is going to happen. So I know that you'll be there to cheer them on, and I know my dad would be proud because there'll be some Navy guys there. And my last thank you, Queen, statement is that I really personally want to offer my sincere gratitude to the Board of Directors of Pride because I am truly humbled to be among those who have been honored as champions of Pride. I am proud to be among the women and men who have received this honor for being part of the fight for LGBT equality. So many of them. Al Best, you're still here. There were many, Maria Placencia, Jerry Dilno, Chris Kehoe, Albert Best. Oh, it goes on and on and on. But we have this legacy in San Diego. You know, San Diego's been known as this conservative military town. Well, look at us. We're out proud electing gay people, amazingly so. We have lots to be proud of. We can be proud of the work that we've been doing. And so I really want to thank the Pride Board for this honor, and it's really heartfelt. And so as we say in Spanish, mil gracias de mi corazón. 1,000 thanks from my heart. Now some thoughts about this civil rights movement of ours. The LGBT civil rights movement has moved forward with huge success in little more than 40 years. And I know we've been getting a little testy and a little impatient in the last year with the president and this group and that group and the way that things are moving. But let's put it in perspective. It's important to look at our advances within the context of the other civil rights movements that have paved the way, in some ways, for the LGBT movement, especially when we consider that the struggle for equality by former slaves was only a dream when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, and in 1865, when the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery. African American men didn't get to vote until 1870, when the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. It wouldn't be fully realized for all African Americans and other non-white Americans for nearly a century with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Notice that I didn't mention women in there. Black, white, brown, or any other color. That's because, as you probably know, the suffrage movement had to take place. And you need to remember that those women, those brave women who stepped up and said, we need to vote, they were rightfully angered when the talk about giving African American men the vote, what about us? The other half of the population. And it was Sojourner Truth, a black woman, who also said, aren't I a woman? Aren't I another woman? So it was a little bit of time. It wasn't until 1920 that women, black, white, brown, yellow, or any other color, got the vote. So our country, yes, let's celebrate those women, all of those women who fought for it. Women are still working for full equality. What Whatever happened to that ERA, huh? We got to work on that, don't we? So our country and its leaders have had a history of being slow to provide all the rights guaranteed in the Constitution to all citizens. But the people persevered, like we're persevering. And the civil rights movement of African Americans survived lynchings, murders, assassination, and provided the first civil rights movement model for the struggles of Native Americans, Latinos, Asians, and Pacific Islanders. Basically, everyone who was not of European, Caucasian origin. Then, 40 years ago, something happened. In 1950, two fledgling organizations, the Daughters of Bilitis, a women's lesbian organization, and the Mattachine Society came into being. They were breaking ground. Mattachine in Los Angeles, Daughters of Bilitis in San Francisco. Unfortunately, the organizations didn't survive the oppression, the condemnation, the marginalization of our people. But that spirit remained, and then something happened that 40 years ago. Some lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgender people had had enough of self-hatred and abuse at the hands of police and government. Thus, the American fight for LGBT equality was born on the street when gay people fought back in front of the Stonewall Inn in New York City. They weren't going to take it anymore. The American gay liberation movement and civil rights movement was born. It spread around the country. Small groups came, the Gay Liberation Front came into being, and people and pride celebrations took place all around the country. And you heard some of how right on this very spot where the first one's rally happened. We've made some great advances. You've heard about them. I think it's absolutely appropriate that it's the theme this year is Pride Around the World, especially when last month the United Nations passed a resolution and the United States signed on to it. A resolution that is dedicated to promoting and advancing basic human rights of LGBT people around the world. Additionally, the Obama administration has 3 years in a row made proclamations for LGBT pride. Secretary Clinton has carried that through the consular corps around the world and in support of LGBT movements where permissible in the countries where we are stationed. The administration added the United Nations to an additional resolution calling for an end to criminal penalties based on sexual orientation or gender identity, a measure that former President Bush had refused to sign. So we go forward. And it's important to remember that racism didn't end with the election of President Obama. Instead, the opposite happened. A new set of racist code words emerged. Outrageous accusations about the president's birth and heritage lingered until just recently. And then there was the insulting imagery picturing him as an ape. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which monitors hate crimes and takes violators to court, reports that the Tea Party Nation, one of the most extreme factions of the Tea Party movement, has lashed out lately with a flurry of attacks on immigrants, Muslims, LGBT people, and of course, President Obama's birthright. Let's not forget that women in our country haven't achieved that equality. They deserve the economic equality in the workplace, and most importantly, as regards their right to control their own bodies. The current aggressive Republican attacks on Planned Parenthood in Congress reminds us that the war to take away women's reproductive rights and the dismantling of Roe versus Wade is yet another never-ending battle on the civil rights front. You and I, as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, need to work with women to support that right. You and I have to work in coalition with all of the other groups. We did some good coalition work just recently. In the redistricting process, the LGBT redistricting group coalesced with the Latino redistricting group and the African American group to create maps that reflect a community of unity. That's coalition building. That's the kind of work we need to do. We are not alone in this struggle. And if we want more equality, we've got to help other people get theirs as well, and we can do it in unity. There is strength in numbers, and there is the strength in our vote. It's so very important. I have one more thing to say.
One more, wrap it up.
So my final thought to you is this. Again, civil rights never ends. As a gay man of Latino and Pacific Islander heritage, it never ends. And you, as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, of whatever heritage, it's never going to end. There's always going to be some group that wants to take something away from someone else. And I want to remind you, we must accept that there will always be those political and religious organizations who want political and economic power and who will use any means to deny or take away rights from others that are different from themselves. We must not forget that the Mormon, Catholic, and fundamentalist Christian churches supported the passage of Proposition 8 with millions of dollars and the power of their pulpits. We have great power and coalition, and we will win that right to marry in California, and we will beat them at their own game. I join with you, and let's keep fighting the fight.